Thanks for tuning in. Today I want to share how I store my luxury items. That includes like my jewelry pieces, my small leather goods, my bags, and even some of my shoes. I know we've all seen those absolutely drool-worthy closet tours on Instagram and on YouTube. And as gorgeous as they are, for someone like me who lives in a tiny apartment in New York City, that's not quite realistic. I don't have like a dedicated room for all of my beautiful pieces to like be on display and things like that. So I thought this would be helpful to share the tips that I use to ensure my items are stored properly, they don't lose their shape and nothing really happens to them, as well as some storage tips for those of us who don't have a lot of real estate to work with. There's going to be a bit of background noise. I have the window cracked open slightly because it is mid-afternoon when the sun shines and gives me beautiful lighting, but it means the apartment is pretty hot. So I hope you don't mind the outside noise of New York City. So my number one tip for storing, especially handbags, is to keep them in their dust bag. When I store my bags, I like to keep them in the dust bags, and for some folks you might be inclined to keep them in the box. For very select pieces, I do that, but I try not to put them all in the box because I want to make sure the leather is still able to breathe, if you will. It's still able to get some natural contact with the air, and the air can circulate through it. I don't want it to get too like stuffy and stale in a box that might keep a lot of the air out. It might keep some of the fresh air out. And if there is, for some reason, a little bit of moisture trapped in the box, then it could make some of your items get a little like moldy, and we don't want that. So I do keep them all in their dust bags because I have a tight space to work with. My bags are kind of like right next to each other, and if you put leather against leather, a lot of times they will stick to each other, or you can even get color transfer from one bag to another. You definitely don't want that happening, which is why I put all of my bags in their dust bags. So now I was debating whether I would actually show what a part of my closet looks like, because I know some folks are more visual and it might be helpful to actually see how all of it's placed. I am going to share a few shots of my actual closet. And no, I did not clean my closet. I did not make it look perfect. I didn't make it Instagrammable. I really did not do anything. This is literally the raw managed chaos, what I like to call managed chaos in my closet. Everything kind of has its own place, and it might look messy. It's definitely not something that you would see in like a home magazine. It's not that quality or caliber of organization. But there is some method to the madness, and I wanted to show, like, in a smaller space, how you can manage to store a lot of your items. So I have a dresser inside one of the closets, and on top of that is the surface where I store like my jewelry, my perfumes, and some handbags on one side. And then you'll also see like there's some of like my canvas tote bags and things like that that are hung up. When it comes to the bags that are on top of my dresser, you'll see all of them are in their dust bag except for my Birkin. The Birkin's the only one that I leave out. Because it's in a closet that doesn't get any direct sunlight, I'm not concerned about anything happening to the leather, and that's just the way I like to store my Birkin. A, so I can see it because it's just so beautiful, and B, also it makes it easier for me to be able to use the bag because the dust bag's pretty tight for the Birkins, and like just having to like really like finagle it out of the dust bag is not something I really want to deal with every time I use it. So that's the one that does not have a dust bag on it. And then on top there's like a extra shelf, if you will, that leads to then the top of the closet, and you'll see that there are some bags there. I have some hats stored on the side, and then behind that is a wonderful world of Tetris of all of my boxes. 90% of my boxes are pretty much up there where you see them all kind of stacked in the back, and as well as like the shopping bags of when I got the items. I am weird like that. I really like packaging, so I hold on to all of it. And like I said, it's a wonderful world of Tetris in the back, where I have managed to stack my boxes or stack boxes within boxes to be able to fit them all in the back. And then on the front side, I leave some of my handbags there for easier access, so I can grab some of the smaller bags on the front. There is also this plastic container that's towards the middle, and that houses a lot of my mini bags. They are all in their dust bag as well, and they're just, because they're a smaller size, I put them inside of a plastic box just so that I can put it in and out and just bring down the plastic box if I want to grab one of those bags. It gives the organization a little bit more structure than just like leaving all of my bags hanging out there. It also gives me a little bit of space to put in some extra dust bags on the sides if I need to. And it has a lid, so I can actually close the lid and store more things on top of the box. I have some vertical space that I'm leaving in case I need it for later. I know that was a lot in terms of how I store my bags, but the number one key is that I store especially my leather bags in their dust bag, so that nothing happens while all of my bags are stored in very close proximity to each other. Sometimes there are bags that don't have dust bags, and those I will just leave out. I'll just ensure that the closet space is kept dry, and I do that by using charcoal pouches. I know there are like dehumidifying like chemicals that you can leave in your closet, and the whole purpose is for it to dehumidify the closet space and make sure there are no odors, and it also gets rid of like that musty smell and things like that. I steer away from those chemical agents to do that, mostly because I am afraid of what if something happens and it leaks or something like that. I have seen a video of someone's Birkin who's gotten ruined by having that kind of dehumidifying chemical in her closet, and it actually leaked through and it ruined her bag. And so I prefer using charcoal pouches. It's a natural substance that naturally dehumidifies, deodorizes, and just maintains a kind of pleasant atmosphere inside your closet, and that will ensure there's no extra like humidity or stickiness on your bags, and that nothing ends up smelling really musty. Even if you don't have luxury items in your closet, I highly recommend that you get these like charcoal pouches and hang them in your closet. It will help to just keep the whole space fresh throughout the year. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I will link them down below so you can check them out, or you can check out the ones that I purchased from Amazon. Okay, so in terms of dehumidifying, I use those charcoal pouches. On the bottom of the closet, I also have these little sachets of cedar chips. That's also to keep your clothes fresh. So I put cedar chips on the ground, and I put charcoal pouches like kind of hanging at the top. So that was like the general organization of my closet, and also how I keep a pleasant environment within my closet to make sure all of my items are in a good place. Now I'll get into a little bit more specifics on how I store some of the items that I have. So when it comes to the bags, like I said, I store them in their dust bags. For most items, for most handbags, I will also stuff the insides of the bag. So for example, I have this little Gucci Super Mini, and inside, when I purchased it, it came with some stuffing on the inside. So I leave the stuffing on the inside of this bag, and I store it with the stuffing. This is a pretty soft bag, if you will, and this is one that I suspect would have a tendency to lose its shape. So because of that, I ensure that there is some stuffing on the inside at all times when I'm storing it and I'm not using it. Another example of a larger item that gets stuffed is my Chanel medium flap. That's a tweed bag. This isn't something that I necessarily think will like heavily lose its shape or anything, but again, it came with some stuffing inside of it, so I just maintain the same stuffing. Because this is a single flap, I like to leave the stuffing inside just in case the flap wants to like smush down a little bit. So I will put this stuffing inside of it, and I will leave it inside of its dust bag and store it when it's not in use. Because this is a bag that's a little bit more seasonal than some of my other bags, when I'm done using it for the season, I will give it a thorough look over and make sure there's nothing major, there are no major dirt pieces or anything hanging on it, and then I will put it back in its dust bag, and I will actually cinch it up when I am putting it away for the season. Otherwise, I don't cinch my bags shut. I leave them open because, again, I want the air to flow through it and also make it easier for me to take them in and out of their dust bags. But when I put it away for the season, I will cinch this up so that it's more secure, and then I will store it like this. There are actually some pieces that I will not stuff, and for example, this is my wallet on chain. So I leave it in its dust bag like everybody else, but because this is a pretty narrow item and it's pretty rigid, it's also an item that I don't want to necessarily stretch out and leave stretched out all the time. I actually do not stuff this item with anything. I will just leave it the way it is, like this, with the flap over, and store it like this. Now, when it comes to Chanel, especially Chanel leather items, something to be considerate of is, or something to be mindful of, I should say, is that when leather and leather come into contact, there's a higher chance that they can stick together over time. And so when you get a classic flap from Chanel, a lot of times there is an extra felt piece that is between your flap and the body of the bag. My small flap and my mini flaps, they all have that extra felt piece that goes over, or that goes in between the flap here. This is a walk. And I purchased this a couple of years ago, so it might be different now. They might be, because the walks are, I feel like, considered a lot more of a handbag. When I used to buy walks, they were definitely considered an SLG, and you didn't even get a dust bag because they considered them to be an SLG, and SLGs don't come with dust bags. So I think because of that, this doesn't have that piece of felt, or maybe it came with it and I took it off because of how much I use this item and I couldn't be bothered with it. But that is something to be mindful of. If your bags don't already have a piece of felt and you have some felt, you may want to just stick it in between and let it be the added layer of protection between the flap and the body of your bag. For an item like this, I leave the straps inside. I will tuck them all inside. I will close the flap, and that's how I like to store my bags. Coming back to my flap bag, for an item like this, you'll see the straps are kind of pulled taut. I like to pull them through on one side like this, collect them on the inside of the bag, lay them on top of the stuffing, and I will let the straps kind of sit on the top of the bag. So that's how I typically store my flat bags, but there are some folks who are concerned that the straps on top may leave an indentation at the leather on the top of the bag. So for an item like my small flap, because it comes in this classic flap white dust bag, it has an extra pocket back here, and so I will actually leave these straps to be taut, and as you can see, I tuck them in on this side on the flap, and then I let the flap actually fall forward, and I store the bag this way. And I mean, over time, I think regardless of how you store your bags, there is always a chance that something might get a little depressed, but that's also just the merit of just the bag and time passing, so that doesn't bother me too much. But like I said, this is how I will store the classic flap, because there is that extra compartment for straps. When it comes to SLGs, like small leather goods, I actually leave them out like this, and that's mostly to encourage myself to rotate between the small leather goods that I have. I have one full-size wallet, which is my Hermes Compact Beer, and I'm sure you've seen it in so many videos now because it's my only full-size wallet. And so I actually change into card wallets or these smaller styles when I am changing my bag to a smaller bag. I don't want it to be very difficult to have to reach my wallet when I'm trying to change out and pack my bag to leave. So that's why I leave the ones that I use very frequently, I leave them out and I leave them on top of my dresser so that they're really handy to access. I have some that I haven't used in a while. Those are actually packed away in their dust bag and box, and they're tucked away on the top layer of storage because I don't really use those. I don't gravitate towards those, so they're kind of put away. But the ones that I use frequently, I will leave them out in the open like this with no dust bag, no nothing. Now there can be some questions and concerns of like, oh, like won't they color transfer because all of the leather is like hitting each other. With the frequency that I use these, which is pretty much daily or even like weekly at a minimum, where I will be moving these in and out, I'm not too concerned that something will happen to them because the amount of time that they're sitting on top of each other is not prolonged. It's not like they're, you know, stationary like this for months at a time. There is pretty frequent movement. If that's something that concerns you, then I would definitely recommend just cutting a piece of felt in between just to line them so that there is a little bit of something else in between the leather. I think that should be fine. I've also seen there's like business card holders. You could use that to store them one by one, or you can use like those file organizers and also slot them in there. So there are a lot of options, but for me right now this just works fine and I don't have that much space, so I like to just leave them out in the open. When it comes to the costume jewelry that I purchase, I will tend to leave them in their boxes. So you can see I have like a stack of boxes here. This isn't the most efficient way to store my jewelry, but so far it's working fine for me. I don't tend to buy too many costume jewelry pieces, so for my collection right now this is working, and I leave them in their box and in their little dust pouch or whatever it might come with. So for example, inside this box there's a dust bag and then the bracelets inside of here. I know this kind of goes against my philosophy of putting bags in boxes because I want the leather to breathe, but a lot of times costume jewelry are like metal pieces, and if they are exposed to the air for a prolonged period of time, they might get a little tarnished or gross. So that's why I tend to leave them in their boxes so that I minimize the amount of exposure it gets to the oxygen in the air. So as much as I can, I leave my costume jewelry in their boxes, but there are some pieces that don't have boxes, and those are like the vintage pieces that I pick up. In that case, I put them in these little pill boxes, if you will, and I store them inside of here. So if you've seen my like how I travel with my luxury items video, I've shared that I like to travel with my jewelry in this kind of pill case. So these pill boxes are really helpful for housing earrings that don't really have like a box that they came in. And then the last category I wanted to touch upon are shoes. For shoes, I also like to keep them in their dust bag or their box. If they are more special occasion shoes, I will tend to leave them in their box because I don't wear them like on a daily basis. So for example, I have like this pair of Manolo Blahniks, and I actually leave these in their box. I don't even use the dust bag because they're in their box, and I will just leave them fully inside the box like this. And I make sure to put the little tissue paper in the toe box area to make sure that it maintains its shape and it doesn't get crushed. I also make sure that there is some piece of, tissue paper or something that's kind of padding the shoes and creating a little barrier between each of the shoes, because I don't want them to rub against each other and then either leave marks or color transfer or get stuck together or anything like that. So when they're in the box, I try to leave them the way that they are like when I purchase them, and then I will, after I wear them for the day, I will return them back to the box. I make sure to return them after they are fully like aired out after I've worn them. For my more everyday shoes, I like to leave them out of their box, but I will store them in their dust bag just so that they do get some protection from any kind of accidental like rubbing up or things like that. I will leave them stuffed with the stuffing that tends to come in with the shoes themselves when you buy them, because again, I like to make sure that the front of the shoe maintains its shape, and I will just leave them in their dust bag and put them inside the shoe closet with the rest of my shoes. When it comes to ready to wear pieces, because I am slowly adding more ready to wear to my collection, depending on the item, I will either leave it hanging up, I will leave it in its garment bag, or I will fold it into a drawer. So if it is like a sweatshirt type of item, then I will fold it up and leave it in a drawer and make sure the drawer has like a cedar block or some cedar chips in a sachet inside the drawer to make sure that it stays nice and fresh. Some of the tops I will leave on their hangers and I will hang it in my closet. And then like my Chanel dress, it's really long. It is a knitted piece, and if you hang up knits for too long, the shoulders will start to sag just from like the gravity pulling down on the dress. So I don't want that happening, so I actually have that folded up in its garment bag and I store it in the garment bag. So I think that's everything. I think those are all of the main tips that I have to share on storing my luxury pieces in my collection. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope there are some tips that you were able to take away. If you're somebody who likes to see your items on display and you have space for it, I absolutely say go for it. If that's what makes your heart sing, like, you don't have to put everything in its dust bag if that's not how you want to enjoy your items. I just make sure that it's not exposed to any direct sunlight, because the direct sunlight can impact, you know, the leather or the dye in whatever items being on display. So I just be mindful of that. But if you have the space for it and you want to display your items, absolutely go for it. Like, I'm sharing these tips from a very like practical sense of how I like to store the pieces in the little bit of space that I have. This is just how I make it work with what I got. I know I shared some crude photos or videos of my own closet, and I know it's not picturesque, but that's the reality of my closet. I hope it gives you some ideas for how you can maybe organize the closet space that you have. If you have any specific questions, feel free to leave them down below or head on over to Instagram, and I'd be happy to help however I can. If you liked this video and you got some tips out of it, please give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate all of your feedback and support. If you haven't already and you like this kind of content, I post new videos every Sunday. So if you'd like to be one of the first to know, feel free to subscribe. So until next time,